What is up, fantasy people? Fresh out of the frying pan into the fire. I am Trav, coming from Dirty Laundry Studios. Got my co-host on the West Coast, Tyrell McLaughlin. What's going on, Ty?
Living the dream, as always.
And this is the True North Fantasy Podcast. So we are really proud members of the brand new Fantasy Points Media Group. And Ty, we're going to talk about that in just a second, but I just want to give the intro to our guest tonight. Just below me on screen, we have Nate Christian. You can find him on Twitter at NateNFL. He is a writer and ranker for the Dynasty Nerds, writing player profiles for Dynasty Owner, and he is an integral piece of the machine that is the Dynasty Rewind and everything they've got going on over there. Nate, how are you doing, my man? Happy first time on the True North Pod, buddy. Muted, my man. You're muted, Nate Dog.
We can't hear you.
He's signing pretty good. He's signing pretty good.
I know
that's okay. That's
usually,
okay.
We don't have these
happens
graphics from the Dynasty Rewind, so I couldn't tell that I was muted. Usually it's from my screen.
I beg to differ, actually. You guys have some really nice graphics. How are you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great. I love talking rookies, so I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. I specifically targeted the two of you guys to come on to talk some rookies. And the second of that two is a very good friend of True North Fantasy Football, as well as myself personally. He is the engine that drives the Dynasty Rewind, and some people call him the dollar store, but I call him the IKEA Andy Holloway. Just let's put a little bit of respect on this man's name. That would be Mike Bauer. You can find him at Rewind CEO, that new handle. Mike, how you doing, brother?
Good. The new handle is just exuding arrogance, and that's what I'm going for. Also, yeah, I am kind of the engine that drives it. So if you see me looking at my phone, I'm actually talking with Sean about some behind the scenes stuff. So I'm not ignoring you guys, just trying to multitask here. Glad
Absolutely.
to be back. Glad to finally sit down with you, Ty. And Nate, it's always good talking to you. You know that, my man.
Yeah, when you can hear me,
Well, that was quite the open for the show. It was good, and at least we got a little laugh about it. So I'm not worried, Nate. Let's have a good one, buddy. Thanks to everybody who's shown up and had a listen. We really appreciate that. Already see my man P2W, who is also a part of the Fantasy Points Media Group. So Ty, obviously I want to talk a little bit about that before we get in. We're not going to go too deep because we did do a launch video yesterday where Director of Operations Ben Kukanis from Fantasy Points came on with us. We talked a little bit about, what the media group's all about, what our role is going to be in it, and what Fantasy Points kind of wants to do with it overall. And that was really, really cool. So definitely anybody go check out that. But for anyone that missed it, it's an incredible project that's been put together by Ben himself. All the names over at Fantasy Points too. They got John Hanson, Graham Barfield, Scott Barrett, Joe Dolan, Tom Brawley, Greg Cosell, Adam Kaplan, like you name it. These guys are just studs. The site is just made up of some serious legends, so we're really thankful to be able to affiliate ourselves with them. They were looking to form a group of some smaller shows who they could band together with a bit of a common goal of helping drive the Fantasy Points brand. But I think the coolest part about it, and Ben is totally all in on this, is that they really want to help promote some of the smaller podcasts who are putting in a bunch of work as well. So, we're thankful that they decided to reach out to us. I think, Ty, there was a little bit of good timing on our part because we had Graham Barfield on the show right around when they were doing it. So shout out to Graham for probably putting in a good word for us. So loving it. Super excited about this. Ty, do you want to talk real quick about what the Fantasy Points site offers?
Yeah, I did definitely go through a lot of that on that mini stream yesterday. And definitely, I think the biggest selling point for Fantasy Points and why I'm so enthused is because you get to stand behind the product that you're kind of selling or whatever you're doing. And I couldn't be more proud because these are a bunch of the analysts that I've literally tried to emulate through the years. And the fact that they've put together this company while other sites seem to be bleeding a lot of talent and not keeping their talent around, a lot of the talent has ended up at Fantasy Points, and they've put together this really fantastic group. So I'm just happy to be a part of it. And I think basically this shit sells itself. If you just go on that site, you follow these people, you're already gaining like a massive edge on people. So if you want to go on the site and kind of tinker around, you can find everything from yards created by Graham Barfield, which is a metric I kind of swear by come rookie season. Some of the projections, the DFS tools that are there, second to none. And just remember, these are the DFS tools and projection tools you can find at a lot of places, but not done by such experts, in my opinion. So I think they have a lot of advanced analytics, red zone stats, all that kind of stuff that you can find on a lot of other sites, but they're not charging as much on fantasy points. And again, you're getting that experience where you have the ability to interact with some of the better minds in the industry. So I just encourage everybody to go on there and feel it out and get familiar with the sites and bookmark everything that you like on there. Cause that's what I've done since even before this came together. Like, this is a resource I've been using since they opened up last year. So really, really pumped about it.
Yeah, man. And like their premium subscription is only $125. And right now they actually have a 20% off early bird special. So anybody who is going to check it out, make sure you cash in on that while it's still hot. And of course, with the deal that we've got with them, we have a promo code to get an extra 10% off. So while that early bird's going, you can stack the 10% with the 20, and that gets you 30% off. But at regular times, our promo code will get you 10% off. So you still save some cash on what is a very reasonably priced for what you get with it subscription. So the promo code is 21 True North 10, and that's all caps, 21 True North 10. So go check it out. Tons of good stuff happening. They just launched a draft guide today from John Hansen and Greg Cosell, and that comes in an app. So that's really cool. So yeah, like we said, it just couldn't be more thankful for them and being able to link up and make it happen. All right, guys, are we ready to get into it?
Let's go.
About time.
All right. Yep. All right. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about some of these rookies. Obviously, we're going to talk about the positional classes overall a little bit. We are going to get into a little bit of player discussion, which I'm super excited for. It's always fun to hear you guys wax on some of the players at the Rewind. And then we're going to talk a little bit first here about some of this pick value, because I've been noticing, gentlemen, that let's rewind to 2019, see what I did there, and talk about these 2021 picks, because everybody and their dog was saying that you need to go out and acquire the 2021 first round picks. Fast forward, so opposite of rewind to now, and it doesn't quite seem like those picks have the steam. I don't know if you guys have been noticing the same, but when you've been going to try and maybe sell picks to get some trusted assets for your team, if you have a contender, or even if you're going out to acquire, it seems like people are like either holding or they're not paying up enough for me to want to give them away. So Nate, I'm going to start with you, man. I'm wondering if you're finding the same thing, and what do you think attributes to that? Because we didn't have a combine this season, and obviously COVID is still prevalent, even though thankfully there's vaccines going around. What do you think it's been?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot going on with this draft class and how we're looking at it. Not having a combine, that's huge, because that's become an event that we all watch, and we it's great to be able to compare those numbers. Right now with these pro days, they're just ridiculous. Some of them, they're just handing out 4.3s. Some of them, we got guys we expect to run 4.4s running 4.6s. So like, it's just all over the place. It's hard to, have that consistency across the board to compare players. And also just a lot of players are coming in shorter, lighter, slower than we thought they were going to come in. So just the hype's not building right now. Also, just not having a full college season for a lot of these teams, not having those big numbers that we come to expect of like the top prospects. And then, I think we were spoiled with last year's class. Those running backs to come out and the wide receivers, it was so great. Coming into this draft class, we had some excitement for the running backs. I mean, going into the season, we were like, who's the running back one? We don't know. It could be Najee, it could be Etienne, it could be Chuba. And now Etienne's fallen down, Chuba's fallen down. People are talking about, Najee's great, but he's also like 23 already. So, just the hype of the top running backs isn't there. And that's what really sells rookie drafts in Dynasty, because you want that next big rookie running back. And we just kind of got spoiled last year, with so many good guys, and it just doesn't feel the same, top tier this year.
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree. To me, it feels like maybe a little bit top heavy. Like I think those guys that you mentioned there are still good players and will be good at the NFL level. But I think behind them, it's just really rough. Mikey, are you seeing the same thing?
Well, I gotta say that in a lot of leagues I'm in, it's easier for me to try to potty train my toddler than get anything done, because like if it's no, then let it be no. That's fine. You know what I mean? You don't want to do the trade. You want to wait. That's fine. Just do anything. Do you have the app downloaded on your phone? Is what I want. That being said, I absolutely agree. You know, you're getting pretty good value. I notice a lot of people want my 2023 picks, and I see someone, PJ Kennedy, putting in the comments here like stars and grading the classes, and that's fine. But if you're a savvy enough dynasty player, you can get those 2023 picks back. So I'm fine with moving that 2 year down the road draft capital. The league could fold in those 2 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not on that, and you did absolutely nothing with it. So what you could always do too is load up on those picks, those late round firsts that nobody wants, and then when you're on the clock, let people simmer for a little bit and sell them off at a plus value. And also, you know, Nate, I just want to touch on what you said. People are worried that Najee's 23 years old. You only want these running backs on their first contract anyway. So I don't care if he's 24, 25 on the first contract. You're only going to use him for that first one anyway, and then you're going to ship him out. Usually that's how it goes. I mean, some people just like to hang on to their roster and not do anything, and I'm in leagues with all those people.
No, I think you guys made some good points because, you know, there's definitely a diminished value to these rookie picks this year. But if everybody agrees on that, then these are picks that you can go and acquire maybe for less of a price than otherwise. But I definitely think you guys hit on a lot of the points that I was going to say, like the ambiguity of the class behind the top 5 guys. That's just like what we're all noticing. I think like Jamar Chase, Najee Harris, Travis Etienne are going to be in everybody's top 5 in one quarterback leagues, but like who else is in your top 5, I think is kind of up for debate. Maybe you have Kyle Pitts, maybe you have Javonte Williams in there. Either the Alabama wide receivers could be argued for. Rashad Bateman is a ton of folks, wide receiver 2. And we also have guys like Rhonda Moore, Elijah Moore, Terence Marshall, who I love. And then we have running backs who maybe I have as first round picks, but others don't, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then like what Nate said, you have a lot of these guys in that wide receiver pool who have size concerns, and in that running back room with, or in the running back class here with Kenny Gainwell or Michael Carter, or, you know, Chuba Hubbard, and Trey Sermon's a polarizing guy, and quarterbacks are an X factor in all this, whether you're in a super flex or one quarterback league. So wherever you have Trevor Lawrence, Fields, Zac Wilson, Lance, you know, all these guys. And, you know, there's always guys you want to squeeze into your top 12. And I think of a guy like Tylan Wallace or Amon-Ra St. Brown might be that guy for some people. The point I'm trying to make is everybody I just named could possibly go in like round 1 or the top 15 picks of a rookie draft. And you'll see lots of sets of ranks have all those, you know, second half of the guys I mentioned there, either ranked in the back of the first round all the way to like third rounds of the ranking. So there's going to be a lot of separation between rookies, bigger tiers, I think. And that's kind of what's making these mid to late first round rookie picks less valuable, because drafters know that they can just stand pat in the early second round and take whoever falls. And there's a half a dozen players that I'm probably happy to let that happen. I think the other complex that's kind of at work is like, yeah, it's a strong wide receiver class, but Nate, you really hit the nail on the head. Like it's a collection of smaller guys who might end up being constricted to the slot at the next level, even if it is at a vertical capacity or whatever. So I think there's a lot of wait and see approach. Like, you know, I just think these guys have a lot of issues that sometimes get exposed at the next level. So we're really apprehensive with a lot of these guys. And I don't think it's unfair, but I think, you know, obviously what we're getting at is the move is probably to move back in the draft and try and accumulate some of those picks in like, you know, the 8 to 20 range of rookie drafts this year. Because more bullets to fire, I think, is going to be the approach beyond the top guys in this class.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. I like what you said about the quarterbacks there too, because obviously we all play a lot of super flex and they're going to be super important there. But I think with the mobility that we have at the top of the quarterback class, these guys are also going to come into play at in the one quarterback leagues as well. So I think, you know, for me, those are the guys who are kind of helping make this draft still be a little bit sexy. The running back position, I'm just seeing like a lot of role players behind those top few guys.
Yep.
I don't see a whole ton of guys that can be 3 down backs at the NFL level, maybe 3 or 4, if that. But so I think that's kind of attributing to that. And I liked all the stuff you said about like, we want to get these stud running backs as rookies on our rosters, because that is how you can build a foundation to a title. And yeah, you're going to have to get one of the few options this year.
trade those picks for studs.
Yeah, like your boy Aaron Jones or something
Exactly.
who continuously gets disrespected. I like that. So all that being said, gentlemen, we are going to get some players who are good for fantasy football. So Mikey, I'm going to start with you, my man. What do you think is the strength of this class? Like, I think a lot of people are saying wide receiver or quarterback, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
I would love to say wide receiver, but what Ty said is absolutely true. I mean, are these just a bunch of slot wide receivers? Like Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, Cornell Powell, Amari Rogers, Shai Smith, who I watched film on today, looks like a NFL slot receiver. Jalen Waddle. What are these guys? There's only so many slot positions available. Like, what is we just gonna have like a conglomeration of slot receivers on the line? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
No, they just gotta get a CFL field because it's wider. And you can create more slot positions is what you can do.
And there's always we always have to remind people around this time of the year that electricity, athleticism, it doesn't necessarily correlate with top 12 fantasy finishes at the wide receiver position. In fact, it's usually a bad bet to make because you're buying that built into their cost. Yeah.
And that's one thing that I try to tell people on our podcast too, is being athletic is great. John Ross is really athletic. Just to throw it out there. So athleticism should be one thing that you factor into a player, but it shouldn't be the only thing. I like well-rounded players, and sometimes like a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, not a sexy name, but for the NFL, he's going to be an absolute banger between the tackles. He can move the chains. He can get the job done. It's not going to show up. Whereas a guy like Travis Etienne, I don't like as much because I think he's a straight line runner. His vision's not the best, and his receiving capabilities are there, but not as good as other guys. So you take the two of those guys together, and what do you have? Kylan Hill.
I was wondering how long it was going to take for you to get the Kylan Hill out.
Only 17 and a half minutes.
There we go. But the thing is,
we haven't even talked about running backs yet.
I'm throwing it out
there. I'm not even answering the question.
I know I'm not. I'm just going off track. What I do, I'm sorry.
It's all good, buddy.
He could be a 3-down back. He could do a little bit of everything. He could do it well. He could stay on the field. That being said, just the overall depth, and how many episodes we've done, it's got to be wide receiver. And one of your listeners here, PJ, he said that there could be great value in the third round of your rookie drafts. I absolutely agree with that. But I think part of the problem too is everyone thinks that every player that they draft in the rookie draft is going to be a number one at that position, wide receiver 1, tight end 1. You're not. It's not going to happen. There's only 12, 14, 16 of them, depending on your league makeup. So I'm kind of also falling into the category of draft wide receivers, trade for running backs. Mm-hmm. Seems like it's starting to be kind of the way to go because you can get the value there. Everybody reaches for running back. I've seen people reach for Najee Harris at the 1-2 in Superflex. I don't know what people are doing. I'm like,
wow, yeah. It's just wanting to get that running back, right?
Yeah, I was like, I'll take Justin Fields here then. Thank you.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, Nate, what are you thinking about the strongest position in the class?
Yeah, so I don't think it's actually wide receiver. There is a ton of depth there, wide receiver, but I think it's kind of similar to running backs where it's top heavy. After like the first 7, 8, maybe 10 wide receivers, it is just a huge murky pit of random players. And it's going to be extremely landing spot dependent for everyone in that tier. Mm-hmm. So I think that with the value of quarterbacks in Superflex leagues, this quarterback class, having 5 quarterbacks likely go in the first round of the NFL draft, that is ridiculous. That does not happen every year. That is the strength of this class by far, because if you're trying to grab a couple quarterbacks in your Superflex league this year, it is the perfect time, because you don't get guys like this every year. We don't get 2 of the highest rated high school prospects of all time in Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields in the same class to go with Zac Wilson and Trey Lance and now Mac Jones. I mean, it's just ridiculous the amount of talent at quarterback in this draft class, and they're all going to get great landing spots. They're all going to have chances to start year 1. Like, this is the strength of the class. And even though quarterbacks aren't as sexy as wide receivers, like, we just have to look at it as we're so lucky to have this many quarterbacks going. So,
yeah,
I think that's just to expand on that, I think that's the point for sure, is that from a Superflex lens, it's no doubt that quarterback's kind of the strength of this, because you just don't see an influx of talent like this very often. And talking about the draft capital, I think that's the point of focus for me. Like a lot of quarterbacks, they don't work out. Even top 10 guys, multiple first overall picks haven't worked out in the past decade. But I want to focus on quarterbacks who've gone in the last 10 years, top 10. For fantasy, when you think of the value that they come with in reference to like a startup superflex draft, quarterbacks who go top 10 have so much value if they go top 10 in the NFL draft. Like they're going to play right away. And lots of them go on to have very successful fantasy seasons. And we know, like you said, there's just such a lack of supply at the quarterback position. So to have all these guys that could go in the top 10, it just kind of has to make quarterback the strength from that lens. And I don't know if like the perception is lagging a little bit, but people don't seem to appreciate how quickly these quarterbacks get on the field. And I get it. Like rookie quarterback production, chasing them for fantasy is kind of like a relatively new phenomenon. Only 18 quarterbacks have ever hit 200 fantasy points in NFL history as a rookie, and 15 of those 18 have occurred in just the past decade. And before that, we got just one per decade. A 200-point fantasy season by a rookie quarterback had never even happened until Jim Kelly in the 80s, which is kind of a long story in itself, like his rookie season. But in the late 90s, you got Peyton Manning. And then in early 2000s, you got Vince Young, lest we forget. So it was just really rare. And then now we've had 15 of them, including guys like Daniel Jones and Andy Dalton in the last 10 years. So, you tie that back to draft capital, by the way. Like what I'm doing here is 10 of those 18 quarterbacks to score 200 fantasy points as a rookie actually went top 3 in the NFL draft, which I thought was kind of interesting when we think of the proposition of the 2021 draft going quarterback to start. And 13 of those 18 quarterbacks to have that spike season went top 10 in the draft. Jim Kelly went 14th. So, we'll give him a pass there. And the outliers are like Dak Prescott, Russ Wilson, and then the Gardner Minshew and Andy Dalton right there. And the reason that we see this kind of trend emerging, I think, has a lot of layers from like the team level, like an advantage of having that rookie contract on the books or whatever. But 21 quarterbacks have gone top 10 since 2011 in the NFL draft. Those 21 signal callers start over 12 games per season in their rookie season on average. So they're getting on the field right away. And 18 of the 21 started 8+ games. The only guys who didn't were Pat Mahomes and Jared Goff, along with the Hurt Locker. Looking at some of these quarterback stats, by the way, sorry to Titans fans. Like they, at least they got Tannehill now, but they struggled there.
It was rough.
So I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there, guys, and I'm going to throw even one more out here because I can probably come across as like overselling these rookies for fantasy. Maybe I'm just trying to lay out how valuable these guys are to own in a super flex draft because of the lack of supply. Right. And, this influx is just really rare, like Nate pointed out. But for fantasy, a 200-point season is actually still super outlier territory, even in the last 10 years among guys who went top 10. So while we shouldn't like be ready to identify all these guys as guys who are going to hit right away for fantasy, but these guys are all possible outliers. So, they start 12 games, but on average, they just scores the quarterback 23 for fantasy. Not great, Bob. And just 5 of the 21 finished as quarterback ones in fantasy. And that's like Herb Kidd, Kyler Murray here in back years. And then 8 seasons before that without one. And then we had back-to-back showings by rookie quarterbacks. Back in the day, you had Cam Newton, RG3 and Andrew Luck, whoever the fuck those guys are. So, Trav, I know I'm just rambling here, but my point is Trevor Lawrence is like the clear outlier here to identify from this class. But there's a few quarterbacks here who will really have the math in their favor, and probably 4 or 5 quarterbacks who will come with very strong arguments from a hit rates perspective. And even though the rookie data is somewhat Debbie Downer, quarterbacks drafted top 10 also take massive sophomore steps. So that's when you really feel that in your dynasty lineup.
Yeah, no, I like it, Ty. You definitely brought me into what I want to talk about a little bit more really well. And I think this class is interesting because you talked about it, Nate, how we have such an influx of talent that's going to start. And Ty, you gave all the hit rates and over 12 games started per season for quarterbacks drafted in the top 10. It almost feels like the running back class of last year, where we had 5 really solid guys. And then we had James Robinson and Antonio Gibson even emerge as the 6th and 7th stud running back out of that class. Not sure I'm prepared to say the same for Kyle Trask and Kellen Mond, but some people have definitely expressed that they like them.
I like Trask, man.
Yeah,
you could late round dart throw him on your taxi squad.
He looked like he was like had a pretty strong build when he was at the pro day the other day, and he was throwing it pretty decent. But
let him just sit on your taxi squad for a couple years
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, definitely going to be a taxi squad guy for a season or two. But I could see a team throwing a second round pick at him just because they need to fill that position with some youth or whatever. So I wanted to get into some of the players. You guys laid them out really well. We've got Trevor Lawrence as the clear top option. Behind him, you have three really mobile quarterbacks in different levels of mobile. Justin Fields, Zac Wilson, and Trey Lance, guys that can get around in the pocket, get out into the flats and find some receivers, which is nice. And then, of course, Mac Daddy Jones. He's getting some buzz as well. There's a lot of talk about the Niners pick and them potentially moving into the 3 spot for Mac Jones, which, Ty, we've talked a lot about that, and I feel like it would be pretty wild. But I want to talk about hits and busts from this quarterback class because they're probably all going to be picked within, let's say, the top 15. It's safe to say probably top 10. I want to know who you guys think is the most likely to bust. And I think for this purpose, I kind of want to leave Mac Jones out because I feel like he's kind of the easy option. But if you want to talk a little bit about Mac Jones being that bust or that hit option as well, then I'm totally open to that. Nate, who do you think is the most likely to hit and who's the most likely to bust?
Yeah. So, and we're not going to include Trevor Lawrence in that.
I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, it's going to be the guys behind him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the most likely to hit is going to be Justin Fields because I think he's a pro-ready quarterback. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, Justin Fields can't make it past his first read, just unfollow them on Twitter because I don't know what film they're watching. They're just regurgitating something they see from ESPN. It is ridiculous. You turn on the game against Clemson where he had 6 touchdowns in the college football playoffs. In the first 5 plays, he's making it into his 3rd, 4th read and making plays happen. So, I think there's a lot going on with Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, and Trey Lance. They're all being overanalyzed because they've been around for, a couple of years now. But, it's really hard on Justin Fields right now. I know he had not great games against Indiana and Northwestern during the season, but, Ohio State as a whole team didn't have good games. They were also missing players because of COVID. It was a mess. So, when you turn on the tape, Justin Fields has been dominant on the field since he was like in middle school.
Yeah.
You don't need to overthink it. He is the quarterback 2 in this class. So I'm putting my money on him to hit out of this, the rest of these quarterbacks because he's just going to work in an NFL offense and he's going to make plays happen. And I think he has a really high floor and a really high ceiling. Now, it's funny that you kind of wanted to take Mac Jones out of the bust group because I think he actually has a really good floor. I think at worst, you're going to get a solid quarterback out of Mac Jones. He's a guy that if things go really badly for him, he's going to be in the league for 12 years holding a clipboard. So
for sure,
it's not that low of a floor for him. Now, I think the most possible bust, like true bust out of this class, is actually Zac Wilson. He probably has the highest floor just because people like to compare him to Patrick Mahomes because he has that gunslinger mentality. He's not scared to chuck the ball into a tight window, and he's just creating highlight plays after highlight play. But with that, you could also be Mitchell Trubisky. You could also be Drew Lock. It's not a play style that is safe. It's not a play style that we see work often. It takes someone like Patrick Mahomes to make that play style work in the NFL.
And nobody thought it would work with Mahomes.
Exactly,
even.
Yeah.
Andy Reid just took a shot.
The last guy you have playing like that was Brett Favre. And if Brett Favre threw that many interceptions in the modern NFL, he'd be out of a job like Jameis Winston. So it's not easy. You can't turn the ball over that many times in the modern NFL. So Zac Wilson has a huge range of outcomes. And I think, especially if he goes to the Jets, I hate to say it, but it might be a scary pick there.
I like that because a lot of people are like head over heels for Zac Wilson. And I definitely see the good reason behind some of that because he is a great athlete. He's got a good arm and you do like that guy who gets a little bit of backyard to his game. So I like him, but I kind of feel you on that one that there is quite a wide range of outcomes there. Hey, CEO, what do you think about who's going to hit and who's going to bust? Sorry, I figured I should address you by your proper title.
Before we get into that, Sean says hi. He wanted me to
What
tell you
up,
that.
intern? What up? Thanks for checking it out, buddy. Always love chatting it up with the Rewind intern. And what's up to Porkman and Chev as well?
That's right. Saying hi to everybody. You know, if we do a little helmet scouting here, they're all going to bust, aren't they? Because we got Ohio State, North Dakota State, and Alabama.
Well, North Dakota State, I would prefer if you didn't talk shit about Carson Wentz here, please.
Been up and down, unfortunately. But that was
you going for the Colts next year?
That was an organizational failure as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But I'm going to agree with Nate. I think the most likely to bust is going to be Zac Wilson. I do like his quick release. I think he's got a great arm, great accuracy, but that mentality is going to get you in trouble. And we see the type of offense that teams are kind of gearing towards, where, you know, a lot more mobility with the quarterback, kind of keeping it on the ground, keeping it a little bit safer, controlling the clock. So things like that don't necessarily play in the favor of coaches. You know, that being said, a lot of it's going to be landing spot dependent too. You're just going to get a guy who gets forced onto an organization by an owner that a coach doesn't want. And it's like forcing a square peg into a round hole. And unfortunately, you know, right now, looking at these guys, they're all great prospects. Personally, I think Mac Jones is the most pro ready. I think if he goes to San Francisco at number 3, it's just going to be, you know, wheels up. But it's really hard to say because I like all these guys, but I want to see some landing spots first.
For sure.
I want to see some media, the guys talking to the media as a new member of that team. I want to see the coach talking about them, to see some body language, because these things, all these factors are important too. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with Zac Wilson, biggest bust probability. But you know, Trey Lance obviously making that leap from D2 to the NFL is always scary. Although it's worked out. Carson Wentz did it, Joe Flacco did it, so it's not like it can't be done.
Hey, Joe Flacco wasn't D2. Joe Flacco was just D1 AA.
That's elite. That's elite college football.
Shout out to Delaware.
College football competition. Elite competition. I think this is probably like one of the tougher questions that people have, I think, right now, is what the range of outcomes are with these guys. And that's what I kind of do at this time of the year, is like establish a spectrum, like imagine a range of outcomes, a career arc or what have you. And I kind of just imagine like a big red cross for each guy. It would be like bigger or smaller, you know, on the y-axis and x-axis. And you're kind of like making it bigger or shrinking based on the factors you weigh the most heavily. And I think all these quarterbacks in 2021 would have very different sized crosses, and or they might be really similar, but you're adding and subtracting for much different reasons. And I think you want to like define like each termination point. You'd want to have a definition, like maybe on the y-axis, you'd have Hall of Famer for Trevor Lawrence. And at the bottom, you'd have top 10 quarterback in the league forever. Like his range of outcomes is very small, obviously. And that's why we're kind of leaving him out of this conversation. You know, I just don't think there's much that can go wrong with a prospect like Trevor Lawrence. But after him, there's definitely like pure subjectivity. When you talk about these other guys, it's kind of hard to define all the variables without landing spots. Like I think that's perfectly said, because, you know, Trey Lance, Mac Jones, all these guys, they have really wide ranges of outcomes, starting with kind of that uncertainty attached to them, depending on how confident we are in saying Zac Wilson is going to be in gangrene. I mean, then we could maybe start analyzing him there. But, you know, beyond that, like Mac Jones, for instance, I think, you know, he's just not a quarterback you're going to have a ton of interest in for fantasy unless he ends up as like Kirk Cousins' predecessor in New England or New Orleans or something. Like, I just think he has limitations that Justin Fields and Trey Lance doesn't. And, you know, arm strength, mobility, some of the difference making high variance traits that, you know, myself and GMs hopefully are chasing. I just think he's kind of capped. He had 0 in the rushing department. And I'm, you know, but I'm a statue. Like, yeah, dude, you are kind of a statue in comparison to Justin Fields and Trey Lance. So,
yeah,
you know, I kind of feel bad because, you know, he would have a huge cross, even though a lot of people would have him as a little cross. But I think it's because even if you hit that range of outcomes, it's like a Derek Carr ceiling. Whereas, you know, Trey Lance obviously has concerns of his own, like lack of sample size, production, strength of competition. These are pretty glaring concerns or boxes left unchecked, but he has the tools, you know what I mean? And it's hard not to chase the tools over whatever it is people are chasing with Mac Jones. It just kind of goes back to that old adage. If you don't have a top 5 quarterback in the league, you're always on the look. And evaluating these 3 in 1999 might have been a very super different story, right? But in today's NFL, the tools, the arm strength, the rushing upside, I think it's almost a necessity these days, because those things can combat when structure breaks down and everything. And for fantasy, with this quarterback bottleneck, you almost need one of those on your fantasy roster as well these days. Definitely in Superflex, I think you do. And I think the same philosophy should be at work. Like if you don't have a Kyler Murray, a Josh Allen, Lamar, Deshaun, Mahomes, one of those guys, you should be on the hunt for the next one because of the impact that guy can have for your NFL team, but also for your Superflex roster. So yeah, I didn't really answer any of the question there, Trav, at all when I weighed in, but Mac Jones, I think would just be such a low hit. Like just remember that Blake Bortles could have won you a league once or twice, like straight up, and Derek Carr never would have. Like just keep that in mind, everybody. Just because I think we kind of nailed it. Like all three of these guys kind of need to be put in a good situation. Like we want to know, is Andy Reid putting them in the best situation to succeed, or are they landing with Adam Gase? Like that definitely is going to make a huge difference. But when it comes down to it, like I really think Zac Wilson has a pretty wide range of outcomes, like where he reminds me too much of Sam Darnold to just like set him in stone with the Jets. It kind of scares me. And then you look at Trey Lance and Justin Fields, like I really like Justin Fields, I guess. I just think it's hard not to go with Justin Fields, who just checks so many boxes that Trey Lance leaves unchecked.
QB2 Justin Fields, formerly of the Netflix TV show QB1. In fact, I don't know if any of you guys watched that, but I saw Justin Fields on that in high school. It was a pretty interesting watch. I like how you guys wrapped all of that stuff up, and I'm kind of in agreement that Justin Fields is my hit. And the other guys have a lot of variance, but I would say Zac Wilson. Just what vibes I get from him, and this is going to be super disrespectful potentially, but I get like rich man's Johnny Manziel vibes from him. He's scrambling around. He's throwing like Derek Jeter from shortstop when he's running away from the first base, and he
was a former shortstop.
Well, there you go. I just get kind of those vibes, and that's not like disrespectful to Johnny Manziel, which is why. Well, that's not disrespectful to Zac Wilson, because I said rich man's. Like he's kind of what we wanted Johnny Manziel to be. I feel like the
Mormon Manziel.
That one's gonna stick. I love it. So really quick before we ride out of these quarterbacks, guys, I want to gauge a little bit kind of where you guys would take them in your startup draft. So this is another one we're going to leave Trevor Lawrence out. So real quick around the horn, who's your quarterback two? Nate, you said Justin Fields. Ty, I know yours is Justin Fields.
Yeah, and really quick, I just want to say, like, Trevor Lawrence, I think, is the most interesting one because I don't know where to put him in that fat, sexy second tier of a quarterback startup, like in a super flex. I honestly have a really hard time with that one. Like, Dak Prescott, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson. I know I have him ahead of Joe Burrow just because of the talent, deviation I think of between the two. But I think he's a pretty tough one to gauge his value right now in super flex, even though he's the one that we know where he's going to be, and that he has a pretty offensive-minded head coach with some weapons at his disposal.
Well, Nate could tell you he took both of these guys in a startup recently. He took Trevor Lawrence at the 2-4 in a startup, and he took Justin Fields at the 3-12.
Highway robbery.
Wow. So do you remember like what quarterback overall you had to take Lawrence as?
He's got the whole draft board up there.
Yeah, I pulled the whole draft board up. So, I'll just go. Obviously, it went Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson at the 1-4, Kyler Murray at the 1-5. I took Herbert at the 1-7, then went Dak at 1-8. Nate actually took Deshaun Watson at the 1-12.
Steal.
Then wrapped around Tilo at the 2-4. And then I double tapped. I took Joe Burrow at the 2-6, then Russell Wilson 2-7, Aaron Rodgers 2-9, and then not another quarterback, surprisingly, until he took Fields at the 3-12. So
I got 9 in quarterback 9 for Lawrence and quarterback 14 for Fields. Yeah, which I think doesn't sound off. No,
and I really resonates with my rankings. At least I love what I just heard. Like it's almost exactly like I think you got a really good deal on Lawrence, and I don't know if you'd get the same deal after Daniel Jeremiah has been on through draft weekend and really hyped everyone up. I'm not sure you're going to get the same discount there. But I love that. And I think there should be like this little chasm because that's what I'm saying. Like, I definitely know that Lawrence is in that tier and maybe he's above Burrow, but I'm not putting Burrow below that tier. And then that second tier comes up, especially in a dynasty superflex when you have someone like Aaron Rodgers hitting that 38-year-old threshold that I think we all set when it comes to some historical data. And then you have like Jalen Hurts, Tua, Ryan Tannehill, all these quarterbacks have imperfections. So I think that's right around where I'm starting to look at Justin Fields, even maybe Trey Lance, not too far after that. If you're going to throw like Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, and Carson Wentz in that tier I just talked about, then throw, Trey Lance in there, in my opinion, Zach Wilson too.
So Ty, I already had Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields. Mike, you tell him. I got Trey Lance as well.
At the 9-12, but it's funny because
9-12.
Ty, you just said, you could put Jalen Hurts and Tua in that tier. They are the next two quarterbacks that went off the board at this draft.
Wow.
And then Baker Mayfield went at the end of the 4th round. He actually went one pick after Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, wow.
Which I think Ryan Tannehill at the 410, I probably wouldn't have went there with Baker on the board. To be honest with you, I would.
Yeah, and especially in a super flex, like obviously this is all roster dependent or roster construction dependent. Depending, like if you have a Deshaun Watson or a veteran stud quarterback, you're a lot more inclined to take a shot on a Trey Lance or somebody like that, especially when you already have Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson on your team. So I love that play, but I get why people are in on somebody like Tua who's going into his sophomore year. Like these are all good picks to make. But it's definitely like a value proposition. Like, what are you giving up to make a pick? Like, I just think a Jalen Hurts is a tough sell in that area where you're paying so much for him. I definitely prefer to wait and take a Trey Lance or Justin Fields later.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that, guys. That's I love that you had that draft board up, Mike, because that was the perfect dive into it.
Yeah,
I really like that. Like, I was going to list off some names and get you guys to tell me who you wanted more, but I think that was really, really good conversation. And I think all the names that I was going to list were right there. So it's really interesting how that kind of fell into place, because that's kind of the conclusion that I was thinking that we would come to when I listed off your Tuas, your Bakers, your Cousins, Wentz, and Jalen Hurts and Tannehills and stuff like that. So that was really awesome, guys. I love that, Mikey, and thanks for being ready like a true host. I like that. Yeah. Don't call him dollar store Andy Holloway ever again, boys. I'm gonna start talking shit in the comments if I hear that again. I'm gonna come down there and bust some heads. You know what I'm saying?
Gordy's. Well, I think roster construction is really important. Like speaking of Gordie Howe, like the oldest man ever, Tom Brady, like that's what is really the hard decisions you're gonna have to make in a startup. I think this year is, do I want one of these Trey Lance or even a Kyle Trask maybe once you're getting up there? Or are you going to take a Tom Brady on a 1 year figure it out thing, or even like these Kirk Cousins or either the Matts, whether it's of the Stafford or Ryan variety? Also, I have no idea where I'm supposed to take Jameis, but I'm taking Jameis.
Do you want to see where Jameis went in this draft?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, definitely.
The 14-4.
Okay, and where is Taysom in relation?
I don't think he's even been drafted yet.
No.
The 17-11.
Okay.
He was taken.
Interesting. And that's kind of like a value too, because if he ends up the starter, you're freaking laughing.
Well, and what you do in a super flex startup is take both in the 13th and 14th, right?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, we got our buddy Kyle Senra talking about old man Chris Chelios. I love how you were saying
every
Gordie
Canadian's
Howe
his favorite defenseman.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Chris Chelios probably played with Gordie Howe in Detroit. Jesus, Murphy.
Yeah, well, I was going to say on the Gordie Howe note, you said Tom Brady only has 1 year, but I don't know if you guys heard the report, but his new goal isn't rings. He wants to play in a Pro Bowl at 50 years old, much like Mr. Hockey did in the Hockey All-Star game. So 1 year, Brady, we got like 5 left. Ty, you're tripping.
So we're going to be talking about Gore against his son before we're talking about Brady retiring. Duly noted.
Yeah, well, Brady might be playing against his kids too. kissing them on the mouth.
No kissing.
Tom Brady playing against Peyton Manning's nephew here soon.
Right. What's his name again?
Archie.
Yeah, right. After
original,
Gramps.
real original. Just kidding.
Nice,
you can
guys.
name your kids after your grandfather. I'm not going to attack.
Especially if he was in like an NFL quarterback who was
makes sense.
War hero.
That guy had to battle through being a Saints starter in like the worst era ever for the Saints. That guy deserves a grandkid named after him, if you ask me.
Yep.
Larry Murphy, most underrated defenseman in history.
Right. I like that. So guys, we're going to get into the wide receivers and then in turn the running backs. But really first, I want to talk about our show sponsor, the our friends over at Monkey Knife Fight. Sorry, guys. I just tripped on myself a little bit there. But Monkey Knife Fight is the fastest growing DFS platform on the planet. Obviously, there's no NFL football being played right now, but baseball just started today. Ty, you got to sit and watch opening day today, and I was jealous.
Extras.
Very nice. Right on. I'm going to have to watch the Blue Jays in 30 after the game or something like that. But yeah, so they've got baseball props. They've got hockey props. They have UFC, which is hot and heavy right now. They're dabbling into esports, which is really cool if that's your cup of tea as well. So, we love our affiliation with Monkey Knife Fight. They've been nothing but great to us. Appreciate their president, Nick Sulsky. Big fan of his, good buddy of mine. And if you want to go and play on Monkey Knife Fight as well, use promo code TNFF and you will get an instant match of up to $50 on your first deposit. So if you want to, get some good chances to play some games for all skill levels where you can make a little bit of cheddar and double, triple, whatever it may be your money, go over to Monkey Knife Fight and use that promo code TNFF, because if you deposit 50, you get another 50. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is 100 bones. So monkeyknifefight.com, promo code is TNFF.
Just checking your math there. I got the same thing.
Nice. Good. Yeah. I didn't know that there was going to be math, but I was just rolling that read off the top of my head for a sec, guys. So that's kind of where
50 chance.
Yeah. 51 and 50. That's 100.
There you go.
Or is it 49 and a half and 50 and a half? Okay. I'll stop. We're going to move into the wide receivers, guys. We talked about it a little bit before about them potentially being the strength of the class, but maybe not being the strength of the class. I think we would all agree that there is some depth of talent here, even if there isn't a bunch of size and people who we see coming out as strong fantasy assets in a short manner. But I would say it's a pretty strong class as well. And if we look back, we've had some pretty strong classes lately. We have Justin Jefferson coming out last year and all of those other wide receivers, Ayuk, CeeDee Lamb. We had the DK draft. There was some good guys to come out. A couple of busts in that one as well, but some really good wide receivers coming out. And I'm curious, guys, do you think these strong wide receiver classes are going to become the norm, just as kind of a staple for us to have a bunch of options to pick through? Or is it just kind of a product of the talent that's coming out at this particular point in time, as opposed to maybe, happening because of all these spread offenses or whatever that are featuring these guys more? What do you think about that, Nate? Do you think that is something that we're going to see, or do you think it's just kind of this period in time?
I think this is going to continue. Each year we're seeing these pro-ready wide receivers, and it's for multiple reasons. One reason is that the college game and the professional game have never been more similar offensively. And we're seeing these college offenses come to the NFL, and we're also seeing college offenses use some more NFL vernacular, use some more complicated and complex passing route combos. So there's just so much similarity between the college game and the pro game now that wide receivers can step right into the NFL game and produce. We're also seeing with running backs, with quarterbacks, just about everything. Players are getting more productive at a younger age all across the board. Remember a couple years ago when, we say that tight ends take 3 years to break out. Well, 5 years ago, wide receivers took 3 years to break out. Now, if a wide receiver hasn't, had a breakout year his rookie year, we're over it. We're over them. We're dropping them for the next thing because it's just high turnover in wide receivers. This, what's going on right now. And there is a lot of talent in the college game still. This next class has 4 or 5 guys that, are vying for the wide receiver 1 already. And the 23 class looks just as good as the 22 class. So it just keeps coming out every year. We're seeing, just the numbers and also just the athletes at wide receiver. We've seen it with some of the wide receivers this year. When you have a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", runs a 4.4, and it's 220 pounds, stuff like that every year, it's just getting ridiculous. I mean, there's just so much talent that, there has to be that high turnover, because as soon as you're not at the top of your game, someone is chomping at the bit and they're just as athletic as you.
Yeah. J-Jaw can attest to that. Sorry, Mike. Sorry, Mike.
Can I disagree with Nate? Because when everyone ran the wing T, I would say that's when college and pros were more similar than they are now.
Okay, yeah.
I
That's
might
true.
be dating myself a little bit there. I do think it's a trend that's here to stay, but it could be deceptive because, Nate, while you make a great point that college and the NFL is very similar, college will have a way of simplifying things. And at the end of the day, they don't care about developing talent so much as they do winning football games. They want to be a successful program. They want to win games. They want to bring in money for the university. They want to pay their coaches and the boosters that are supposed to be not getting paid, make millions of dollars somehow.
Student athletes.
Yes, there we go. You can sell their likeness, but you can't give them anything. So it's just a crock of BS. The NCAA is corrupt, but we could talk about that another time. That being said, I do believe that colleges will simplify their offense, put their best players in the best position that will make them look good enough to get drafted. Hey, look, we drafted these guys. But while Alabama produces a lot of top-tier talent, they produce their share of busts too. Trent Richardson is a prime example. So, again, always make sure you don't scout the helmet, you scout the player. But that being said, just the receivers that have been coming out for the last couple of years, I do think it's a trend that's here to stay. Just wanted to go on my NCAA tangent for a minute there. Sorry about that.
No, that was good. That was valid points that
Right
need
up my
to be brought up. Yeah, fire away, Ty.
No, that's just I love those kind of discussions. We'll have to do a separate corruption in FIFA and NCAA and the Olympic Committee podcast another day.
That's
for
a
sure.
deep dive. That's gonna be like 3 hours long.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a 6-part mini series. Yeah. Get at us, podcast 1.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. The spin-offs, like the fantasy footballers have the spitballers. We could spin off to like, some corruption shit. That'd be pretty interesting.
Conspiracy theories.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to. Now I've got the itch to dig into some of them tonight, guys. So that's what I'm doing after the show tonight. So we talked about the depth. We talked about this is going to be something that becomes the norm. I did mention Justin Jefferson. Obviously, his rookie season was astronomical, but I want to talk a little bit about whether this rookie class in particular, with Jamar Chase, Davonte Smith, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, Rondale Moore, all those guys. I wonder if you guys think that we're going to see any early hits of the magnitude of what we saw from Justin Jefferson. Like, that was pretty crazy, and I think a lot of things came together for him. But I think, we are seeing that a lot of these guys are coming in more NFL ready, and there's going to be some good landing spots for some of these guys. So, Mike, why don't you kick this one off? Do you think we're going to get some early hits out of this wide receiver class, or might we get a little bit of growing pains, maybe because of that size issue that we're seeing?
I think we need to figure out first what's a good landing spot. Is it a good NFL landing spot or a good fantasy landing spot? So a good NFL landing spot is going to be a team where you don't have to be the number one right away, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then it's bad for your fantasy team. Then again, you could have a good fantasy production in year one. You could have like a Dorial Green Beckham who had a decent couple of years very early in his career, and he got traded and he just kind of tapered off, and now he's out of the league. So what you want is a good wide receiver to go to a mid-tier team. You want the landing spot like CeeDee Lamb had, like Justin Jefferson had, where they could go somewhere where they're going to have the chance to contribute but not be forced to do anything. Remember, BC Johnson was supposed to be a thing for a little while. Actually, Nate and I talked about this on one of our Patreon podcasts. We think that Dez Fitzpatrick from the University of Louisville would be a perfect wide receiver 3 for the Minnesota Vikings because he's got the size, good enough speed to be an outside receiver. So when you're talking about landing spots like that, sometimes it's what's expected of you right away. Sometimes the least expectations lead to the most fantasy points. And I think I could speak for everybody a lot. Well, I can't speak for anybody. Myself, mostly. Way too low on Justin Jefferson last year. Way too low.
Agreed. Same here. Yeah, guilty. Nate, you want to add to that one, my man?
Yeah. So I think there are a couple pro-ready wide receivers in this class, and then there's a bunch of guys that it's going to be extremely landing spot dependent. And rookie production is landing spot dependent no matter what. You got to be an offense that's going to, number one, give you the chance, but also be high enough volume. So, but looking at the prospects like Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith, Rashad Bateman, and even guys like Tylan Wallace and Terrace Marshall, I like those guys to be able to produce right away. I think they don't have as high of a learning curve as some of the other players. like I could totally see Davonte Smith having a Justin Jefferson rookie year. He's that pro ready. His football IQ is off the charts. He has the athleticism. He does everything so well. And he's just so ready to slide his college production right into the NFL that if he gets a halfway decent landing spot, I have no reason to believe he can't put up at least a wide receiver 2 rookie year. At least wide receiver 3, but I would expect almost a wide receiver 2 just because he's that talented, and just with decent volume, he's going to be efficient. So, there's guys out there, and there's guys like Rashad Bateman who could be a target hog. They could be like a great PPR flex wide receiver 3 their rookie years, because they can, like, by the end of the season, those guys could be seeing 6, 7, 8 targets a game. They're just that talented. And it's going to be even Justin Jefferson, the first 4 or 5 weeks, he didn't do much. It was mostly that second half of the season where he was just dominating. And that's going to happen with every single rookie. I mean, except for like CeeDee Lamb, but he was in like the most pass happy offense of all time. Yeah. So, once we get the landing spots, we can kind of project our rookie years more, but I'd still see guys that can have that same kind of rookie year as CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and some of the other guys we saw from this last year's class. Guys that will produce, year one.
For sure, man. I like that. So you talked about some of the names there, Nate. And so I want to dive into a little bit of kind of rankings-ish talk. I know you guys got your rankings going over on the Patreon, so I definitely encourage anybody who's listening to go check that out. Mikey, you want to drop the URL for the Patreon, brother?
Sure. It's patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. And we lowered pricing as well. So there's $1 support tier. But you're basically give us $1 saying, hey, we love you guys. And you get access to the group chat. For $5, you get everything else. You get rankings, you get the written content, you also get the group chat, and you get the bonus podcast as well, which I think actually, I don't want to speak for everybody on the show. I love doing the bonus podcast. A little bit looser, a lot more fun, but it's pretty quick. So you know what I mean? If you're going somewhere, running some errands, and you're not going to be out long, you could bang out a Patreon episode or 2.
Very cool. Yeah, I love what you guys are doing. I love that you guys took that delve into doing that this year, because people love them some Dynasty Rewind. So nice work on that, guys. And I know the whole crew is putting in a bunch of work on that. So very excited for you guys on that front. So getting into those ranking talks, like I was saying, I want to talk about the guys behind Ja'Marr Chase. I want to talk a little bit of Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman, and Davonte Smith. I've seen a lot of people who could have either of those guys as their wide receiver 2 behind Ja'Marr Chase. I think there's a lot of people that hate on Davonte Smith, even though I think consensus would have him behind Ja'Marr Chase as the wide receiver 2. Nate, how do you rank those 3 guys? Waddle, Davonte, and Rondale?
Yeah, so Davonte Smith is my wide receiver 1 over Ja'Marr Chase, even after the 4-3-8. I'm not saying Ja'Marr Chase is bad at all. Ja'Marr
Hates
Chase.
him.
So if I had to rank my 2020 class with my 2021 class, at number 1 is CeeDee Lamb.
Right.
And then it's Davonte Smith and Ja'Marr Chase over Jerry Jeudy, Laviska Shenault, and Justin Jefferson. So nice. I like Davonte Smith and Ja'Marr Chase a lot. They're both extremely talented players. I can see them absolutely dominating the NFL. But Davonte Smith is my number 1 just because he does everything so well, and I don't care about his weight. I don't care. Chad Johnson doesn't care about his weight. If Ocho Cinco doesn't care about his weight, I don't care about his weight.
It's Ocho, man. It's Ocho.
That's the period right there. And then coming to these other guys, because Jalen Waddle and Rhonda Moore kind of finish out that top 5. Someone can have someone else in that top 5, but usually you see Waddle and Moore in there because they're just such playmakers. But it's a big question of how their game translates to the NFL. Yeah. You got Moore's questions because of his size, and you got Waddle's questions because we've seen guys like Henry Ruggs come up before him who are just speedsters and, don't do well in the NFL, and especially not for fantasy. But I think I like Waddle more than Ruggs. I did not like Ruggs last year. I do like Waddle this year. I think he brings a lot more than just speed. He's a good route runner. He's good with he can catch the ball away from his body with his hands. He brings a lot to the NFL game. And we even saw when he was out there limping around on one ankle, he was still getting open. He was still creating separation on comeback routes and curls and stuff. So I'm not really worried about his game, just becoming a speedster guy like Henry Ruggs has become, because I think he can bring a lot more to an offense than that. So I actually have Waddle after Jamar Chase and Davonte Smith and Rashad Bateman. I have Rashad Bateman as my wide receiver 3. I'll go ahead and throw that out there. But I have Waddle and then Rondale Moore. They're both talented. They make up my top 5, and there's a bit of a teardrop after those guys. But I think Davonte Smith is up there in that tier with Jamar Chase above the other guys.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's good. And I like that you got Davonte as your wide receiver 1. And I also like that you mentioned that Jalen Waddle isn't quite Henry Ruggs, because something that I saw out of him too. And like you hear people compare him to like Tyreek Hill, which I'm not really quite there on that comparison, but I do see certain things like the fact that for a smaller guy, he will go up and, he'll use his body in contested catch situations as well. I think that's different. I haven't seen a ton of that from Henry Ruggs necessarily either. So I think maybe he's just got like a little bit more dog in him or something. I'm definitely not a professional scout by any means, but just a couple of observations that I had.
Neither am I, Trav, but I agree. Like, I think we try and comp people to Tyreek Hill these last few years so desperately, but I think since Tyreek Hill burst onto the scene, I think Jalen Waddle might be the most comparable guy to Tyreek Hill in the NFL. That doesn't mean he's going to land with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, and it doesn't mean that he's going to stay healthy, because he also comes with some injury risks as well. So it's definitely a fair comparison compared to some of the past Tyreek Hill comparisons, but in my humble opinion, but I think Jalen Waddle definitely comes with a lot of upside for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Mike, how do you have those guys ranked? Are you pretty similar to Nate's or a little bit different?
Well, so it's going to go Davonte Smith for me, Jalen Waddle, and Rondale Moore. That being said, I'm not as big on Rondale Moore as everybody else is. Yeah, I understand he's only 5'7". He's really strong. He's really fast. He jumps really far. That's great. He also missed a lot of time in college, and he was not getting hit by NFL defensive backs. In college, I understand that Ohio State turns out a lot of defensive players that go on to be top-notch defensive players in the NFL. Unfortunately for me, a guy like Rondale Moore is a guy you have to scheme into the game.
Yeah.
He's not a natural fit into an offense. That, to me, means when the game's out of hand, he's probably not a guy you're putting on the field. I want somebody that's going to be on the field more often than not. Also, that being said, I would probably like to take a guy like Rashad Bateman or Tylan Wallace over these 3 guys. I think they're prototypical outside alpha wide receivers. It's going to be on the field all the time. So that's not a knock on these guys. That's just how I feel strongly about those other guys. So, and I think part of the problem too is people think that if you like one guy more than another guy, you hate this person. No, that's not what it's about. It's about who I think be the most points. Some people think that Elijah Moore is wide receiver too, and in this class too. So he knows exactly what I'm talking about. So everybody has their own thoughts. Everyone has their own processes. Twitter sucks.
No, and that's the funny thing is if you look at everyone's rankings and you address it that or approach it that way, then everybody hates somebody. That's for sure. So the guy I'd hate is Rashad Bateman. Unfortunately, I hate him. Even though I don't at all. Like, I don't hate him at all. I think he's almost easily the second most NFL ready wide receiver. Like, he's just so ready to go, I think. And, has a floor as like that big slot guy in any offense. Like, that's his absolute floor. But I just don't see him as that guy who's going to be a top 12 wide receiver ever. But I just was kind of making a joke because I do have him as my wide receiver 6. And I have taken a lot of heat for that just because I have Jamar Chase ahead of him, Davonte Smith, which is, I'm glad you guys are on because I've been getting a little bit of heat for having him at 2. But yeah, I still really like Davonte Smith. I do recognize that he's fighting a ton of history, historical data, all that stuff I know. But, I'll take the shot because of the upside. And same with Jalen Waddle at 3, Rondale Moore at 4. I just, I can't get over that breakout age that season. Watching some highlights from that year is hard to get out of your freaking brain. And I definitely recognize that he's a guy. Him and Jalen Waddle are they're frustrating because I really can see it coming to fruition with them in a good offense with good quarterback play or a good deep ball schemer as a play caller. But I also think they're guys who could miss, they could be Will Fuller types in the NFL, right. I think. And then, I have Rashad Bateman and Terence Marshall kind of right beside each other. I'm a really, really big Terence Marshall fan. I think everything that people look for out of wide receivers, Terence Marshall has. He just wasn't able to put it on display. And, he was analytically, if you dive into it, for sure. And he was a prolific touchdown scorer, obviously, as well. He was just behind Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase there at LSU. And then I have Elijah Moore and Tylan Wallace as like kind of rounding out the guys that I'm really still targeting in a startup draft. Tylan Wallace, exactly the same thing. I think I'd have that guy even higher if it wasn't for some of the injury concerns. And it's a guy I want to see medicals because there's a lot of lot of whispers from that end. I'd like to know exactly what his body is like. And then Amon-Ra St. Brown,
That's
Amari Rogers
phrasing.
as well.
I like him wearing Rodgers.
And Amari Rogers, I really like, just wondering if he plays wide receiver or running back. Like, I don't know if a team's going to see him as a gadget slot guy or if a team's going to draft him as a Lynn Bowden, Ty Montgomery type. But I think a pre-draft, post-draft press conference will tell us that. And if he is kind of in more the Lynn Bowden mold, that's a guy we'll probably be targeting for fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that was, I think on the Rondale Moore talk, I think the one thing that I really like about Rondale is that, Mike, you were saying like he's got to be schemed up to get that opportunity. I think if he is, he's one of those guys that's probably going to give you those 20 to 30 extra points per year as a runner on rushing plays, with maybe a couple rushing touchdowns or some, some sweeps or end arounds and stuff like that. He was used a little bit like that, I believe. And I think he has some of that in his game where he can do that. So I do like that about Rondale Moore. I'm similar to Nate. I have Jamar Chase and Davonte Smith switched. So Jamar at 1, Smith at 2. Rashad Bateman is my wide receiver 3. Ty, I'm pretty sure you probably hate Terrace Marshall compared to me because I have him as my wide receiver 4. And then at 5, I've got Jalen Waddle, Rondale at 6, Tylan Wallace at 7, Dyami Brown at 8. I love me some Dyami Brown. I love him. And then Amon-Ra at 9 and Elijah Moore at 10. So as anybody watching this can see, there is a ton of variance behind the top 2, essentially, Well,
I think like landing spot is really going to dictate a lot of this because we keep talking about manufactured touches. I couldn't think of one guy here. Like, that is very true for all these guys, including Davonte Smith, who led the CF, he led the entire nation in screen passes, yards off screen pass and all that. So I think a lot of these guys are going to be fighting that, and it's going to depend on how creative that play caller is, how much they're going to weaponize that player. And, some offenses are just so much more willing to do that, or so much more, they have a stronger belief that that's part of an offense that is very tough to predict what play is coming out of any scheme. So I think some of these outside zone schemes, all the pre-snap motion, a lot of these jet sweeps we're seeing sweep the nation. I think, we want these guys to land in those offenses, and then they get the uptick. And I think landing spots will sort a lot of this out. The old baseball adage, like it'll sort itself out. But I just want to throw it out there. Like, I don't get it with Rondale Moore. Like, I think he's closer to like a DJ Moore than he is like a gadget player. I think he's the one. That's why I'm like still really high on Rondale Moore, because I really do think he looks like DJ Moore when you watch his highlights, like maybe even better. He's just 5'7".
Rondale Moore is definitely, he's a guy that, is so exciting to watch, and you can't take that away from him. You can't take away the freshman production. I mean, it was incredible seeing him come out as an 18-year-old and just dominate Ohio State. I mean, there's nothing like it. So, like, it's hard to be down on him, but it's also hard to be super high on him as well. It's just, he has such a wide range of possibilities. So,
and Trav, you mentioned Terence Marshall. Like, the funny thing is, I probably end up, wussing it out and not taking Jalen Waddle, Rondale Moore, any of these guys, and getting Terence Marshall at the back end of the first. Like, that's my play.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think he has that upside. Like, aside from Jamar Chase or maybe Davonte Smith, I think he has just as much upside.
And these debates that we're having, I think, is what's really driving that mid to first to late round rookie pick devaluation here that we're feeling. Yep. Nobody cares. Yeah.
Also,
I'll just take whoever.
If it's validating, I also have Dyami Brown at wide receiver 8. So
yes,
nice.
That is validating because I know that you guys do a lot more film watching, and I think you guys have been doing rookie scouting a lot longer than I have, and that's kind of one of my favorite times for the Dynasty Rewind is the off season, because I'll be honest, guys, I got 3 kids. I don't have a ton of time to be watching a whole bunch of film, nor is that my wheelhouse as far as being able to analyze these guys, right? Like, I'll look at film to get a feel for like how big a guy plays or what his game speed is and stuff. Like, the nuance stuff isn't necessarily my bag. I'll pair what I watch on film with some of the stats and stuff, and that's how I get mine. But I really love it because you guys tell me about names on your show that I've never heard of, and then I look into them and I really like it. And Nate, we talked before, and I really wanted to get you guys on just for this to hear some of that. So, Nate, we're going to start with you, my man, as the one who has not been on the show yet. Mike's been on the True North pod before. You're going to kick us off with, give me another wide receiver that you're really liking this draft season.
Man, this is a bad NFL draft season for my wide receiver sleepers. There's 3 guys that I had as my guys this year. All 3 of them have absolutely just done the worst pro day ever. And I'm just here like, oh
you're
God,
allowed to swear if it's cutting you that deep, Nate.
Gosh, I was so excited. And then all 3 of my guys just ran like 4.7s.
Ooh.
And I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with this? But I had to stick with my tape rankings. You know, I grade the tape. I take into account, you know, our measurables and landing spot and draft capital stuff when I actually do my rookie drafts and when I rank for Dynasty. But my tape grade stays the same no matter what. So based on that, at wide receiver 9, this is going to sound crazy, is Jamon Osbon. You probably haven't heard of him, but he was a Texas A&M wide receiver who opted out of the 2020 season. And he was looking great. He had a good freshman year. He had a good sophomore year with Kellen Mond. If he had played in 2020, I think he would have made a lot of noise. Kellen Mond and the Texas A&M team did really well in 2020. He would have been a focal point of a top 10 offense in the college football landscape. So it would have been great for him if he played, but he didn't. So he opted out, sat for an entire year ready to train for the NFL draft, and goes out and runs a 4.7. So I don't know what that says about who he is or what he's doing with his life, but something's not right. But on tape, he looks great. He's one of the guys I think that, you know, actually has that ability to be a good X receiver, an alpha receiver, let's say, because he's physical. He runs great routes. He has good hands. I absolutely love his tape. I know the other guys on the Dynasty Rewind weren't quite as high as I am. They call me a little crazy because I think his play style and the way he runs his routes and gets his release off the line of scrimmage, it's almost Davonte Adams-esque. Now, I don't think he's going to be Davonte Adams, especially with
heard it here first,
his
folks.
Pro day and the fact he's probably going to be undrafted. But just the style of play, I think it was very similar, and I think that's what really caught my eyes. You know, this guy looks beyond his age, beyond his production, and I was hoping to see everything kind of catch up to that. It might not. So if I had to give a sleeper that's a bit more relevant to your rookie drafts, I'm going to go with Jonathan Adams Jr. He's
I like it.
I think because this draft, like we talked about, is missing the big X alpha receiver. You know, the guy that is going to be that wide receiver 1 for your fantasy football team. The guy that's going to be the target of every single pass that quarterback throws, because when it gets to getting the first down, they're going to target that guy. So Jonathan Adams, he's a big guy. And even though he played for Arkansas State, and it's not a team you've heard of that many times, he was showing up against good competition. You know, he had highlights on SportsCenter because he was making those big plays. And at 6'3", he plays even bigger than that size. He's 6'3", 220 pounds. So he has a great thick frame. He brings that physicality and that contested catch 50-50 ball. You know, he wins those. Great red zone threat. He's a guy I think could find a nice spot. He's day 3 most likely, but if he goes to a place like the Houston Texans, the world could be his. An open depth chart, he is ready for it. He's going to play the X receiver spot. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, and you talk about pro day performances, like he tested out really explosive, I think, like broad jump and vertical, And just to throw it out there, like I think make sure you are subscribed to the Dynasty Rewind channel, just because this is a season where you've talked about all the ambiguity, the uniqueness of this offseason with COVID and everything. And you'll hear a lot about how NFL teams have to rely on their film guys a lot more, and we in the fantasy community certainly are at the mercy of the film guys this year, more so than any other year. So it's definitely just shout out for you guys there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I like both of those guys. Sorry there, Mikey. Just real quick, because I had heard of Jamon Osbon, and surprise, where I heard him from was the Dynasty Rewind and Nate Christian, ladies and gentlemen. So I actually looked a little bit into Jamon Osbon, and I'm looking at PFF right now. And yeah, you said it, like he is an outside wide receiver. Just looking at his potential alpha profile, he had last year, he had 27 contested targets, caught 16 of them. So I don't recall exactly where he sits amongst the class, but I think that's top 10 in the class as far as almost a 60% contested catch rate. And then looking at Jonathan Adams, I just watched some of him last night, and I really like Jonathan Adams, buddy. I like that. I do worry a little bit that he could be maybe a one-trick pony a little bit, because I only watched a few of his games, and it was on the shout out to the astronauts for their YouTube channel with all of the draft breakdown. And it just seemed like that's kind of all that he did, was go deep and have contested catch situations. But I mean, if you look at him, it's even better than Jamon Osbon. He caught 23 of 37 contested targets for 62%. So I like both of those picks, Nate.
Yeah, thanks. And like with Jonathan Adams Jr., he has so much, the world's endless for him if he gets into a X receiver role, in a shallow depth chart. But he does lack that like elite athleticism that we like to see from our X receivers. So,
but that's I don't think a team's gonna expect him to separate. That's why I like the call. Like, he's gonna go. We're not expecting high draft capital, but he's a guy, like you said, if he lands in somewhere like Houston, you definitely want to have your eye on him. I totally agree, because separation is always the issue. You know what I mean? But some quarterback play won't matter. Like, Ryan Fitzpatrick doesn't give a fuck about separation. If he lands in there, I was saying that with Antonio Gandy Golden, and there's guys that every year you come up with that, if it happens, it's going to work out. I actually really like that call for him. I think we could all agree that he might have trouble separating, but as long as the team doesn't expect him to do that, there's a way he could get on the field easily as that contested catch guy for sure.
Yeah. And I just looked up his pro day results. He did end up running a 4.45 actually. Ooh, and he had 39 inches in the vertical jump and 11 and a half almost on the broad jump. So
holy shit.
Wow.
He did test
and
pretty
he's a
well.
monster too.
So
yeah, and that's a guy that is a threshold guy too. Like, you just need him breaking that 4.65 on the gun and things like that. Yeah. And you're not expecting that doesn't surprise me. The short shuttle and the 3-cone, that's what you worry about with the separation and stuff. Yeah. But he does have that explosiveness, so he can, body boys up in the air and stuff. So get up there and go get it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Mike, so who's the wide receiver that you're loving that we maybe haven't talked about yet?
If you guys want to just get some size on your rosters, if you're worried about these smaller wide receivers, I'm just going to throw out some big guys for you here real quick. Damonte Coxy from the University of Memphis, 6'3". This guy I like. Nico Collins from Michigan is 6'4". Warren Jackson, Nate from Colorado State, is 6'6". I like Warren Jackson. Porkman is a huge fan of TJ Vasher from Texas Tech. He's 6'6". I'm not the hugest fan. Sage Surratt is 6'3" from the University of Wake Forest, and I will take him over Osbon and Adams Jr. any day of the week. Do yourself a favor and do not draft Tamarion Terry or Seth Williams.
Oh,
don't draft Sage Surratt, because that boy it's not good.
You zip it.
I don't like Nico Collins.
Okay, you failed to mention Seth Williams, I believe.
He said Seth at the end there.
Oh, did you? Did you say it at the end? Oh,
he just
I like
came back
him too.
And slammed my boy Tamorian there right away after.
I didn't hear that at the end, Power.
Terry.
Yeah, he came in smaller than everyone expected too.
Damonte Coxy was actually one of the 3 my guys, and he also ran a 4.7. And he's another guy that opted out of the 2020 season. So there's no excuse to run a 4.7 at your pro day.
Yeah, good call. He's just sitting there eating cheeseburgers.
Apparently.
Okay, boys. So as is customary on the True North Fantasy Football Pod, we're running long, and I love it. So I know, Mike, you always bust my balls, but in the DMs, there's nobody that busts my balls about the length of our pod more than Mike Bauer. And
it's because the kids want 8-minute videos these days, and we're going good 14 times that length. Yeah.
Oh, dude, Mike is not in that group. Mike is guaranteed. He's rocking New Balances right now, so he's not one of the kids. Yeah, he's not one of the kids. Oh, slippers. That's just as good, buddy.
Slippers on, man.
Yes.
If you're wearing pants right now, you're doing it wrong.
I got some sweats on, but anyway, I want to talk a little bit of running backs before we have to fly out. I know it's late for you, Mikey, and I appreciate you guys. And it's late for you too, actually, Nate, now that I think about it. So I appreciate you guys sticking it out for us West Coasters. We're going to go a little quicker here. Just like I said, it's late for you guys. So Nate, we're going to start with you on this one. Everybody's saying the wide receiver class here is weak. I think we've already admitted that it's a bit top heavy, but that doesn't mean that the guys behind the top are trash. Do you think that might be kind of an overblown assessment? Or are we going to get a value on these guys, or is it pretty spot on for these running backs?
I think it's pretty spot on, but I think it's not that they're not good. I think there's 5 or 6 good running backs in this class. I just think that after that 5 or 6, there's a huge teardrop to just random dart throws.
Yeah.
There's like 5 guys everyone kind of has around their top 5. And then there's just so much unknown. And it's going to be very, very landing spot dependent for almost all of these running backs, including the guys in that top tier. But I mean, with what we saw last year, we definitely got spoiled. And going into this year, it was a little disappointing to look at the top 5 and to see that the top 5 this year is not as good as the top 5 last year. But then, I mean, I think the top guys in this class, they can hold their own.
Yeah.
Especially give them some decent landing spots and some time to work. I think they'll be just fine. I just think that there's no middle ground in this draft class for the running backs. There's the top tier guys, and then there's just a bunch of low tier. There's no middle guys like we saw last year.
For sure. So do you actually have your top 5 handy, Nate?
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? I'm pretty sure I know who your number 6 is when one that you are. It could be a little bit of a hot take. So why don't you give us your top 6?
Yeah. Well, actually, I did some tape watching this morning, and I
have
to move him down to running back 7. I'm so sorry. I'll give you my top 7.
Top 7. We want the top 7 then.
All right. So Najee Harris is my running back 1. Of course. I think it's pretty easy there. I got Travis Etienne at running back 2. At running back 3, I actually have Michael Carter. It's very close for me. At running back 4, I have Javonte Williams. It's very close. They're only separated by like a couple hundredths of a point on my grading scale.
Does that reflect that you think Michael Carter could come in and handle 200 touches in a season? Or does that reflect that you think he's just an electric back and maybe Javonte might be more of a David Montgomery mold than anything?
I think both. I think Michael Carter, he grades out almost exactly the same as Clyde Edwards-Helaire last year. And I had Clyde as my running back 3 last year before the draft. I was big on Clyde before the Chiefs pick. So I still believe in Clyde. I think he's going to have an incredible sophomore season. And I think Michael Carter is a very similar player. He's a bit quicker and bursty, while Clyde is more power. So they are slightly different, but with frame, with how they play, I think they are pretty similar players. And I think Michael Carter can be just as good as Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And Clyde, was an RB2 this year? I mean, people are kind of, no one's giving him any slack for the injuries and what he went through. But so that's my top 4. At 5, I have Trey Sermon. He's a tale of 2 tapes. If we get the Trey Sermon we saw at Oklahoma or at the beginning of the Ohio State season, then it's not going to be that great. If we get the Trey Sermon we saw for the last couple games of the season, though, I mean, I was seeing the next Chris Carson at the end of the season. Right. With that slashing running style, the way that he brought power. I loved the last couple games of Trey Sermon, and I'm just going to try to bet on that upside because if we get that guy, it's going to be a lot of fun. But he is a risky pick because we don't know what we're getting. Plus, there's some injury history there and just being an older back. At 6, I did have to move him above my RBs, my now RB7.
Your crush.
I do have Kenneth Gainwell at my RB6. I went back and watched some more recent games of him that have gone online and a bit more impressed with his contact balance, and it moved him up a little bit. And at RB7, I got my guy. I'm so excited about him, even though he only benched 225 pounds 3 times. It is Puka Williams and his very weak arms. Puka Williams, he might be 170 pounds and can't bench, but the guy runs like a 4.4, high 4.3s, and can stop on a dime. All that athleticism, it's great. We've seen a lot of athletic backs. The thing about Puka, little Pooh, that's what I'm starting to call him. The thing about Puka is he is one of the most patient backs I have ever watched tape on. And that is not something you usually see with the athletic backs. Usually, like, if it's a slower back, he's got to compensate for his lack of athleticism with his vision, his patience. But Puka brings that to the table with the elite athleticism. So outside of his size, I absolutely love what he brings to the table. And I think he has a ton of upside to be a very efficient and electric back at the next level. I don't think he's going to be able to handle 300 touches, anything close to that. But he doesn't need that many touches to be relevant in your PPR leagues. So I just hope he gets a decent landing spot and gets the opportunity, because you don't get a guy like that very often. I think just the patience he shows behind the line of scrimmage is very impressive.
For sure. No, I like that. I like that. Just shows like that you dig deep on these guys that you would know him well enough to be able to confidently have him up there in your rankings. So I dig it, man. And just another reason why you guys are a great resource this time of year and always, of course. Mike, why don't we're setting a new threshold. Top 7 is the new top 5, and we're gonna put that out publicly. Fuck a top 5. I'm going top 7, ladies and gentlemen.
7's the number.
Yeah.
So here's the thing: due to my age, I don't have everything on an Excel spreadsheet like Nate does, and he has it all pulled up. Nate, what are your rankings? Oh, it's right here, and it's up. So I handwrite everything.
We got it all.
I handwrite everything, and then I put it somewhere, and then my wife comes in here to work during the day and organizes everything. So you're getting top 6 from me.
Okay. You had number 7 on a second piece of paper.
Luke is number 7 just by default.
I wrote down what I think my rankings were because I can't find them. So here's what you get. So Najee Harris is number 1 for me. That's pretty much everyone's. You could disagree. That's fine. Javonte Williams is number 2. I have moved Travis Etienne up to 3, and that is because I think his draft capital is going to be good. He's going to get a good landing spot, and they're going to force him to be a 3-down back until he's not, at which point you can move him. I put Chuba Hubbard at number 4, and he's another guy that I think could get some really good draft capital. If he goes to a place like Atlanta or Arizona, I am definitely interested for sure. Even though I'm not
Getting
the
hot and bothered here, Mike.
fan.
I'd be much more interested in Atlanta than I would be for Arizona, to be honest. Like, actually, I agree that Arizona also builds in that yards before contact in the burst that he can, that would definitely be a perfect marriage. But yeah, we'll get him in one of those outside zone schemes and he's going to smash. Get him top 3-round draft capital and he's going to smash.
Yep. But I do put thought in the landing spot as part of my rankings too, or potential landing spot, you could call it.
Yeah.
And then my boy Kylan Hill, he's going to be right there. And then I have Michael Carter and Kenneth Gainwell rounding out. And we'll just put Puka at the very end.
That makes him the consensus RB7.
Yeah.
So far, yeah. Puka's catching steam before the draft, folks.
Can I touch on the next one here? A couple other running backs you like? So
Absolutely dig it.
I like Trey Sermon, although I do think he's going to be better for NFL than fantasy. Khalil.
Agreed.
What else is his name? Khalil Herbert. I always get him and Rakeem.
Yeah, old man Herb kid, new Herb kid.
I like Khalil Herbert, the Kansas and Virginia Tech running back. I think he's a guy that he's going to not be a running back 1 or 2. He's going to be a guy that's going to hang around, and there's going to be some injuries, and you could scoop him up off the waiver wire as a late second plug-in or like a desperation DFS play, and he's going to win you a couple bucks. That's what I think he's going to be. And Ramondre Stevenson, a guy I like watching on film, better for NFL. He reminds me a little bit of DeMarco Murray, but just not as good.
I think he's a lot lumpier and
get back the exact coming back
wider than DeMarco Murray. You know what I mean? Like he's got some junk in the trunk.
It's LeGarrette Blount. I'm sorry, wrong.
There, I see that.
Wow.
I feel like LeGarrette Blount's a little bit more even smooth than Ramondre, but maybe I got to look a little bit more.
I like Ramondre though.
I was a big fan of Gary Blount though, for sure. Ty, why don't you give us your top 7 since that's all the rage?
Yeah, I got Najee Harris. It is all the rage. We all seen something about marriage. 7's the magic number, man. Not 8. No, 7. 7-minute abs.
It's hair gel.
So Najee Harris, and then I do have Travis Etienne. Actually, I just want to pause really quick because I do let draft capital heavily influence my draft rankings when it comes to running backs, and especially without landing spots at our disposal, because situation is everything for 95% of running backs. That's the basis for running backs don't matter argument from a fantasy lens, in my opinion. So yeah, among all top 12 running backs in the last 10 years, if you look at their draft capital, 35% of those seasons came from a running back that was drafted in round 1. 24.2% came from running backs drafted in round 2. We've also seen round 2, like some of the league leaders in rushing and all that. Really just round 2 has been that sweet spot, that top of the second round for NFL teams. And then 17.5% of all top 12 running backs in the last decade have come from running backs drafted in round 3. So that's over 3/4 of top 12 running back performances just right there. 4%, round 4 is 8.3%, just over 4% in round 5, 1.6% if you're drafted in round 6 or 7, and then 7.5% for UDFA. So actually higher than round 5 on. And you look at the guys like James Robinson, Austin Eckler, and these are guys that you want to identify the situation and everything, obviously align that with, marry that with the athletic talent or how they're going to be used in terms of like an Austin Eckler. So that's why I kind of have Travis Etienne so high, but I also have some concerns with Travis Etienne that some people in the fantasy community seem to really want to ignore. But another guy that also, like Chuba Hubbard, if he was to get in one of these outside zone schemes, there's no looking back for Travis Etienne's upside in that, he's definitely the most explosive running back in this class for sure. And then Javonte Williams, I have at 3. Just because he really is going to go top 50, I think. I'm not like the biggest Javonte Williams fan. I worry that, broken tackles have to also, you have to couple that with yards after contact. And I worry about him on the second level and stuff. So I don't know about Javonte Williams from a fantasy lens, like being that high upside guy. And then I do have Kenneth Gainwell, Chuba Hubbard, and Michael Carter as my 4, 5, 6. And that's kind of the area that I'm targeting those running backs. I like all those guys. And then Trey Sermon, totally agree. Tale of two tapes. Do we get that guy from the back of the end of the season? And that's my top 7 there. And then guys I like, little Jared Patterson. I'm going to be a little bit in on little tiny Jared Patterson. If you guys are going to bring up Puka, then I'm taking Jared Patterson. I'll put it that way as one of my sleepers. And then, Javion Hawkins, I like. I love Khalil Herbert. He's just so old. I really like Khalil Herbert. Similar to Trey Sermon. He might be a better real life guy, but if we get the VU Khalil Herbert, so it's an interesting one with Khalil Herbert. And, maybe Elijah Mitchell's a guy, if he wasn't from the Sun Belt, I'd like a little bit more. Chris Evans is like a super mystery box with receiving upside. Same with that Felton kid. I forget
Demetric Felton. I like him a lot. I think he brings a lot of upside for the passing game. So
yeah, and in PPR leagues, we're kind of targeting those guys because we know the hit rates associated with draft capital. He's kind of those guys you want to try and identify that you can get for free at the very end of a startup draft now. Yeah.
No, I like that. And I'm a big Elijah Mitchell fan myself, actually. I had Ray GQ on the show a few months ago, and he, I don't know if I have my book here, but he told me to write down the name Elijah Mitchell. And then I just had it sitting there forever. And then I didn't even look at it. And then in big red letters, it said Elijah Mitchell. So I watched and I didn't mind what I saw. Definitely the competition is not that great for him, but I think he has some traits that could be good at the next level. My top 7 ties is exactly the same as yours, except just rearranged. I got Najee, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams at 3. Chuba is my 4 over Kenneth Gainwell at 5, because I think Chuba is the last guy to me that looks like a 3-down running back. And I think there's not enough stock being put into what he did in 2019 versus the confluence of events that led to his 2020. Like if you look, his offensive line wasn't doing him any favors. I think the offense just kind of took a little bit of a step back, and I'm pretty sure he did have a little bit of injury happening that he was trying to play through as well. So, that for a running back, especially with the explosion that he has, I think is definitely a huge hindrance. So, and that's not just the Canadian connection, although I love that Chuba's Canadian. Kenneth Gainwell at 5. I was stoked when he came in just over 200 pounds. I think he came in at 201.
Yeah.
And does everyone we appreciate that Kenneth Gainwell? I feel like he's somebody who has probably dropped the most in the last couple of months. Like coming into the process, he was pretty high on people's lists. He's really just kind of fallen precipitously. Is it because people think he's just a receiving back? Because I definitely think he's more than a Nyheim Hines.
I think so too.
And I think I keep coming back to this, but it's because half the freaking league's running these outside zone schemes with the Shanahan run game that everybody has kind of adopted here in the last half decade. So that's why I think Kenneth Gainwell, who will probably go in the top 3 rounds, definitely deserves a little more buzz than he's getting in the fantasy perspective. Although at the same time, after having this conversation tonight, I definitely think I should be moving Michael Carter up to running back 4 in my ranks.
And Puka, make sure you move Puka up too.
Yeah, I actually moved Puka up middle of the show, and for no other reason than because you said it, Nate.
Just for the record, guys, and I hate to be that nerdy analytics guy, but since 1990, only Dexter McCluster and Dexter Carter, so he's not even named Dexter, so he's pretty much screwed already here. But those are the only 2 players to score 100 fantasy points weighing under 175 pounds at running back. It's
all against Puka now.
But at the same time, I also recognize, because, why I love analytics is because a site like PFF can actually measure what Puka does, because broken tackle metrics are great, but what he does is just evade every fucking tackle. And so if you look at career missed tackles forced on PFF from this class, it's Javonte Williams at 39%, Puka Williams number 2 at 33%, Travis Etienne 32% number 3. So those are just tackles avoided where a guy didn't even touch him or broke a tackle all combined. And So I really
got a
like
good breakout
Puka, but
age.
it's just, yeah, exactly. And he's done everything. Like he really was super productive, ultra productive in high school too. But he's Dexter McCluster. Like, I'm sorry.
You can get out of here with that on the Puka Williams appreciation show, Ty. That doesn't fit here. So I think you got
only.
Don't you have some charts to make, nerd? Get out of here with that.
No, and like what I think he's one of the guys who had like over 100 yards from scrimmage per game in this class in his career. Like there's a lot to like with him. I just literally can't get past that one single thing. Like I just can't.
Yeah.
Well, here's the fun fact for Puka that Coach Craig has brought up. He actually lost all of the toes. I think it was on his left foot.
That's right. He's got a club foot too.
That is insane.
In a grass cutting accident.
He's my running back one now. If he had full toes, come on.
So I'll say he does have good contact balance, yeah.
If he goes like in the 6th round to the San Francisco 49ers,
yeah,
I'm dropping him 101.
Move over Jermichael Hasty. Yeah.
If that happens, Nate will be insufferable.
I'll have to quit Twitter if that happens.
I'm here for it, Nate. I'm here for it.
For sure.
We're doing a draft day stream, and we'll do a day 3 stream just for you, Nate. So hopefully we can see Puka get drafted.
If Puka gets drafted.
Yeah. Right on, guys. So that's all we got. Went just over that, buck and a half threshold that I told you, but I appreciate you guys sticking around. Mike, I'm sure I'm going to hear about that plenty in the DMs later. So I thank you in advance. So I just want to, again, give a big shout out to Fantasy Points Media Group for the affiliation. That promo code is 21 True North 10, all caps, at fantasypoints.com. Tons of good stuff on there, and we're really looking forward to it. So stay tuned. One thing we mentioned on the launch stream yesterday, keep your Saturday schedules open, namely 3 p.m. Pacific time. Right, Ty?
What? On Saturday?
3? Yeah.
That is correct, yeah.
All right, yeah. So I don't know if it's I don't know if it's fully been put out there exactly what it is. So that's all I'm going to say. 3 p.m. Pacific. Be ready to jump on the YouTubes and watch some fantasy football content, ladies and gentlemen. So thanks to them for that.
Turn those notifications on. You won't miss it.
Yeah. What did the kids say?
Make sure you like or you subscribe and you smash that like button.
Right. Nailed it, Ty. You nailed it. And then I also want to give a big thanks to Nate and Mike for coming on. We really appreciate it, guys. Love everything that the DR's doing over there. You guys have a wicked team built. I know that the content on the Patreon is minty, and just love interacting with all you guys. You guys are top-notch human beings as well as fantasy football analysts. So Nate, why don't you let the people know where they can find you and what kind of stuff you're working on throughout the off season and as we move to the draft?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Nate NFL. And right now I'm actually starting my 30 days, 30 prospect series.
Yes.
So each day I'm doing a prospect of my top 30 film grades. So the first day was TJ Vasher, who we mentioned earlier. Yesterday was Marlon Williams out of UCF, who's a later round wide receiver I like a lot. And today was Amon-Ra St. Brown. So lots of good prospects coming up. Each day is going to get a little bit better. So that's a lot of fun, and that's daily. So that's something you can look forward to every morning when you're drinking your coffee. Of course, Dynasty Rewind, we're killing it over there, doing so much stuff on the YouTube with our Patreon, as well as our just regular podcast. And then I do an article each week for Dynasty Owner on a new prospect each week. It comes with a video usually as well. And then I do rankings on Dynasty Nerds. So you can find me in all those little places, just mostly focusing on rookies.
Yeah, absolutely. You're a busy man, buddy, and I love it. I will definitely be sitting down for my morning coffee on a long weekend, I might add, tomorrow, and soaking up your 30 prospects in 30 days. I love that. Mikey, I actually realized I've been calling you the whole show, and I'm fairly certain you don't like being called Mikey, but I'm doing it anyway.
It's your show, so it's all right.
That's just our love for each other, is that you can accept that I call you that, and you don't have a choice. So
yeah, Opie, you really leave yourself open for next time you're on Dynasty Rewind.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, my last name is just like, it just asks for it. But what's the CEO up to these days, and where can we find you, buddy?
So you can find me on Twitter at Rewind CEO. It may not look like I do a lot, but I do whore myself out to almost every podcast I can. I'm not the best writer. I'm not the best ranker. I do a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and I'm good at talking. So that's what I do. In the span of 2 days next week, I'll be doing 4 different podcasts. So you could check me out on the FF Playmakers, on Dynasty by Design. You could check me out at Dynasty Rewind and the Dynasty Rewind Patreon. So in the span of those 48 hours, that's what I'm going to be doing. And we got our one-on-one series going on YouTube tomorrow night. So today is Thursday, April 1st. So, well, it's almost Friday. But my second one-on-one interview is going to be dropping at 9:00 with Bob Long. Going to try to keep those.
The goat.
That's right. Bob's a great guy. Going to try to keep those every Friday at 9. They're going to drop. That's our old recording time. So if people liked it, hey, here's a video. So the first one was with Andy Holloway. Got the second one with Bob Long coming. We got some great confirmed guests coming up. We got Graham Barfield coming. Kyle Yates has agreed to come on. He's going to be hard to work with his schedule and mine, but we'll figure it out. So not just talking fantasy, but talking about behind the scenes stuff, anything really. They're about 30 minutes long. So, quick hitter, but yeah, come check us out. And guys, thank you again for having us on. Always love talking to the True North guys. Love what you guys are doing.
Yep.
Yeah. The end. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. The Andy Holloway episode was fantastic. I loved seeing, you guys get together and chat. Both
real.
Yeah, that was really cool. I know how stoked you were for that, buddy. So good work on that, man. Ty, you got any parting shots?
I do not. Yeah. Thanks so much to Nate and Mike. I can't thank you guys enough. And I really look forward to, sitting down, drinking my coffee, watching those videos every morning. Cause I love, kind of getting into some of these guys. I think, doing it reverse style is the best way to do it because these are the guys that I haven't watched yet. So it's really, I like it. It's going perfectly. And just a big fan of the Dynasty Rewind. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing. And I'll keep my eyes glued leading up to the NFL draft for sure.
Absolutely. You can follow the brand too at Dynasty Rewind on Twitter, as well as these two gentlemen individually. Porkman and Chev are the other two that make up the fearsome foursome. Porkman is at FF Porkman. Chev is at Chev Boy RD, boy spelled with an I. And don't forget about Sean, the Rewind Intern, at Rewind Intern on Twitter. Woo! That's
impressive.
Not bad, boys.
That's
impressive. Not bad. And last but certainly not least, I want to say thanks to another sponsor of ours, Trophy Smack. TNFF is the promo code there. Use that and you get a free ring on your first purchase of a belt or a trophy. So we also appreciate Trophy Smack as well. So until next week, we got a big episode planned. And like I said, keep your Saturday schedules free because that's going to be a fun day and it's going to be a big day for the Fantasy Points Media Group. So until then and until next week, peace.